Hi, listener. This is From Ideology to Unity, a spiritual journey where we let go of ego and ideological doctrine in favor of meaning, purpose, and unity as a whole. Today, I'm interviewing Tiffany Tin, a meditation practitioner, Reiki master, and the director and lead instructor at the New Earth Alchemists Academy. Tiffany struggled with depression and anxiety for years, and now she helps thousands of people awaken, overcome similar obstacles, and learn to become healers themselves, or simply live with passion. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi, Nicholas. Hi, every listener. Welcome to today's, session.
Well, are those drums you've got in the background?
Oh, it's for my bracelet that you're hearing. So,
Okay. Well, that's a nice sound.
yes, yes, yes.
So, what inspired you to set up your YouTube channel?
Oh, yes. Thank you for inviting me here as well. And actually, it started out just like a way of expression, just to share what worked for me in my own healing journey. And just like many of us, empaths, starseeds, I also went through depression and anxiety and just over time as I was learning to heal myself, I found, oh, how come this was never taught in school? Or how come this I didn't learn in high school? So I wanted to just share what worked for me. And that was like a few years ago now. And since I've evolved so much on my channel, so now I talk about shadow work, energy healing, starseed matters, and there's some mystical teachings. So it has grew alongside with me.
Okay. So, what is shadow work and why is it so misunderstood?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people run away when they hear the word shadow because nobody wants to look into their shadow
Hmm.
sometimes. But that's a good question, Nicholas. Thanks for bringing that up. And I know that a lot of times in the spiritual community, sometimes we can create a bypassing effect where we don't want to look into the dark stuff or things that we are simply not aware of. And to
Yeah.
me, shadow work is simply just diving into the subconscious and seeing what our conscious mind cannot fully see within ourselves. And there are many methods of shadow work, from the classic psychology, Carl Jung teachings, to the more spiritual way of doing it through soul retrieval, ego alchemy, and so forth. But it is really a way to help us navigate the tougher blockages that we experience in our lives, like depression. Instead of taking a pill or instead of just coping with it, let's find the root cause and let's transmute it. So, in a way, to me, shadow work is light work because we're just shining light into those shadows that we're not aware of.
I see. So, and when you shine light on something, well, the darkness retreats and then you see it for what it is. And
Right.
but you might not like what you see.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, or you might not be aware of what it is. I mean, I had shame subconsciously for a long time, and I had no idea that it was that. I just knew that there were certain situations where I felt horrible. I
Mm.
didn't know why. And a lot of people are like that. Is it does it tend to be subconscious, or do you think that some people that shame is a conscious thing?
I think it's both. And thanks for sharing that because I can relate to that too,
Hmm.
like subconscious shame. And a lot of it comes from like, childhood experiences or experiences due to like programmings from parental, social, and different dogma and doctrines. So it's not all of it is our fault, I think. And
Hmm.
we have the power to see it for what it is and transform it. So yeah.
So, what for you was the most effective thing in or getting to know what it was to begin with, to get that
Mm.
awareness about yourself?
Yes, so I think the best way to get started is to become aware by observing. So, a lot of the teachings like mindfulness is a great way to start, even like yoga, breath work, because it's bringing our awareness deeper into our soul, heart, mind, and body. It's only through awareness that we can transform things. So I think that these teachings, and it's great that it's more well known now, because then all of us can practice these techniques. And from there, there's different layers of shadow work that we can do. We can dive into the subconscious, connect with the inner child, and there's many inner childs, right? There could be one inner child that's really afraid or feeling really ashamed from a specific like bullying experience, and that child aspect is stuck in our past, or in spiritual sense we call time space reality. And
Oh,
so when it's stuck there, you're losing pieces of yourself in this interdimensional
a
space,
fracturing.
right? Yes, fracturing. So what we need to do is, instead of being like an octopus holding on to all these memories and energetic imprints, we need to find them and then heal them and retrieve them back into our present self to reintegrate ourselves. And I think that I also want to share in terms of this work, what I've realized is that we have many aspects of ourselves. Sometimes we think, oh, this is Tiffany or this is Nicholas, but we have many
Yeah.
aspects of ourselves, right? So shadow work help us gain awareness of those aspects and learn to love them and accept them. So I don't know if that's how it was for you, Nicholas. Like, did you realize that into your journey as well?
That I had these parts of me that are very
Yeah.
hurt from the past.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first I got into um, Jungian psychology before I got into spirituality. And so that's where I first came across shadow work. And so I was aware that there was um, stuff to be integrated, to integrate my shadow and to get to know my inner darkness and stuff like that. But I really got to know the idea that I actually had traumas to heal. I mean, I have a psychologist, so that helped. But
Mm-hmm.
spirituality for me was a big thing that helped.
Mm.
And then there's this idea I came across recently. Till Swan talked about it, about, well, it's about the fracturing thing where we might split ourselves in two in some sense due to maybe our relationship with our parents.
Mm.
And do you have any insight about that? I'm wondering what your take on it is.
Yeah, definitely. I also learned from Tucson too, so I'm familiar with her materials, and that was actually where I first heard of shadow works, from her YouTube channel too. So, and
Wow.
then I went to train with her completion process, and then I took other courses and trainings. But I think it's really true, because we notice how we different, right, in front of different groups of friends or different people. So when we are at work, sometimes we different Tiffany, and those people know the Tiffany in a certain way, whereas like your family would know Tiffany in a certain way. And so I feel like there's so many aspects of us, as many as other people, because
Right.
they all have a different perception of
I mean,
us.
I've definitely, sorry, I've been told that one person said, like, oh, it's like there's two different yous, right? That's probably more than that, I
Mm,
guess. But it was like, there's this part of me when I was angry or
right.
defensive, and it was like completely different from me when I'm chill, I guess.
Exactly. Hmm.
And I don't know if that's the same or issue as the issue of escaping from things, but at the same time feeling guilty for not
Mm,
working and stuff like that. Um, so I mean, that's just me. I mean, everyone's got all sorts of. It's a mess, right? And shadow work is all about shining the light on that mess, healing
yes.
things, and becoming more whole. I
Yes,
guess.
absolutely. Or I think in psychology they call it parts work. So you look at parts of yourself, like the
Mm.
angry part, and then you look at your trigger and see the pattern. Like, oh, why am I triggered? Oh, the pattern is when I'm not heard, or when I feel like I can't speak up. And then you speak to that part of yourself and ask them, why do you feel it's not safe to speak up? And from there, usually through these questions, you start to realize where it comes from. and that's where we can heal it. So yeah, it's very, very interesting for sure.
Are you How do you feel about the tendency sometimes in society where people look outwards at either just pinning the blame on external people or just the idea that they're a victim for some external characteristic?
Mm, right. Yeah. Um, I think the Vedics describe it pretty well. Like there's different types of ego. So like a
Right.
harmony ego, like a Buddha's ego is sattvic. When someone is like aggressive and only lurk, sometimes they can be like pointing fingers. Those are called rajasic. And the ones that always take everything personally is called tamasic. So I think we all
Huh.
have these threes and we switch between them, but we tend to gravitate towards one or more. So when I was depressed a few years ago, when I was a completely different person, I was very task like everything that anyone does, I take it personally. And it was very hard on ourselves, right? So that's like the classic empaths, where it's like what we label as narcissistic behavior is pointing outwards, right? So these are different types of ego, and we need to learn to how to, I guess, integrate with it, get to know it, transform it so that it's more balanced into the sattvic state.
So you were taking it inwards as other people were hurting you, but I guess you weren't seeing that they were triggering things inside.
Yeah.
And whereas the other thing is narcissism, or what people think of that is basically what's the difference between getting defensive and being narcissistic?
Mhm. I don't know. I think there's a different spectrum. So I think someone that's really, really narcissistic and behavioralized, they just tend to be like law of ones that service to self. Like they care more about
Right.
themselves,
But
right?
I'm just curious about like how do we differentiate between the two categories, because it's possible one might confuse one for another, because obviously there's the Buddha type you mentioned that's more at
Mm-hmm.
peace, but there are these two different ways we might be not at peace, and how can we tell the difference between them?
Um, it's just the inertia of energy. So if you're more tamasic, you pull things in towards yourself and you might feel heavy. Sometimes I find a lot of tamasic people, they can have fatigue because they take everything in. Whereas ratsic people tend to be more on the anger side. They still hurt, right? All of these ego innates comes from hurt from the past or trauma from the past, and they just deal with the hurt differently. So Radzic might, because it's so painful, they don't want to look in, they just point fingers at other people and blast their energy out instead of looking at it harmoniously. I hope they explained it well.
Yeah, yeah. Do some people alternate?
Yeah, some people alternate depending on the situation too, right? So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Okay, that actually really clarifies things, or at least for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's all sorts of things we could talk about because I've looked at your channel. And so, what exactly is an empath, and how do you know if you're one?
Yes, so everyone has their own definition of empaths. And this is, I think to me, my definition is if you're someone that's can have the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, to see from their perspective and understand from their perspective. I think that's in general would be an empath. Also, someone that's very sensitive to other people's emotions and energies. And if you go to public places and you feel drained very easily, when you're very sensitive to things that are beyond the physical, that can be an empath as well. And I know there are people out there that categorize empaths as well. There's like plant empaths, like people really good at reading plants. Some are like animal empaths, where they can speak to animals very easily. And some people are more like emotional empaths or spiritual empaths. So I think everyone has their own version of
Ah, so you
empaths.
might
So
not think you're an empath and actually be an empath, just a particular type.
yes, yes, yeah. I think everyone is an empath to a degree, right? So, but I think what we label as empaths are just the extra sensitive ones. So, mhm.
I mean, this is more personal to me, but I'm wondering. I'm actually I've got Asperger's, and I'm wondering, does that interact with, because that might mean they might not empathize in terms of understanding or noticing body language, other people's
Mhm.
emotions, but is that unrelated to the energetic empathy? Or, so how does that play into whether or not they're an empath and how they empathize from your perspective?
I think the easiest answer is if they have compassion. So, some people, let's say, might look at a person, judge them right away, and just think, oh, they just being this way, da da da. And whereas other people who are more sensitive and their awareness is broader, their consciousness is broader, they can see this is how the person is, and I can see the beauty in this person, I can see the reflection of source within this person, and
Right.
then they don't have that judgment. And I think that's what a lot of ascended master teaches is you see other people through the eyes of source. And yeah, I think that what works.
Yeah. Do you think anyone can change for the better or the worse,
I think
potentially?
so, because we're energy, right? We're energetic beings, and energies can change form. It's dynamic, it's changeable. So, yeah, absolutely. And I see it all the time. People change both sides for the better, for the worse.
Yeah. So, oh, there's so many different things I could ask you about. What about past lives?
Past lives. So, yeah. So if you are, if your listener believes in incarnations, we're definitely beings, like spiritual beings, having different physical experiences. And actually, I know sometimes people say, oh, religious doesn't believe, some religion doesn't believe in reincarnation, but when you really trace back, you can find evidence of these teachings. So I think if these knowledge have been there for thousands and thousands of years, there must be some truth, at least a little bit, right?
Hmm.
And we have the Akashic records, which is the sum of our past life that we can access. Some people can do it through readers, some people can do it through themselves. And sometimes, it just comes to you, you're like, whoa, you just get a flashback of your past life. And I feel that because we're multidimensional, our past life can affect our present life and the future as
Yeah,
well.
it's a bit of a, it was a mind
Mhm.
fuck, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah,
how does that work?
right? And you're like, how does that work? And I guess this is the order of the divine that you can just see this divine orchestration. So
Yeah. I get a sense that there's this
complicated.
divine orchestra, so to speak. I
Yeah,
mean, energy and vibration, right? And
right.
it goes beyond, way beyond 3D, obviously. So we only
Mm-hmm.
get hints of it.
Right. So true. We
So,
understand from
mm,
our third dimensional perspective. So.
so intuition is a very powerful thing. And potentially we could access the Akashic records through it without even knowing that we're doing that. But how do we
Mm-hmm.
really tap into our intuition?
That's a good question. And I think we all have good intuitions, especially kids. Have you ever seen kids? They're like so smart and they can see beyond the physical. It's just that sometimes, even through our childhood, people is like, oh, that's false. You're making that up. Or don't be such a weirdo. We get these things spoken to us. And over time, we learn to shut it down to fit it. But intuition wise, I find people have different ways of being intuitive. Like some people are more like emotional, feelings, sensation wise, so clairsentient. Some people are more like clear cognizant, like they just know, they just get a thought. It's like the
Hmm.
inventors, when they are meditating, they're like, boom, okay, I understand now.
Eureka,
That's
basically.
exactly a eureka. Some people are more like clairaudient, like they actually hear a voice, like sending them messages, or the guys speaking to them. And other people are more clairvoyant, so seeing. So they would get to either see orbs or people's aura colors, or see visions.
Right. I mean, that's fascinating. And I suppose, have you had visions of Atlantis?
I have actually. It's very exciting. Sometimes I wish, you can plug in and project. what you see onto like a screen, so people can see it. It's really beautiful, but of course, like any civilization, there's light and dark, and yeah, it's just a very, very ancient part of our history.
Yeah, could you just briefly like give us a little a description of just the vibe of being in Atlantis?
Wow. Let's talk about the prime of Atlantis. And
Yeah,
this is what I remember the most. And the prime of the Atlantean era is really, really thriving and beautiful. Sometimes we are taught that, you know, now we're at our most advanced, but we're not actually.
yeah,
Back then, we're way more advanced than we are now. And I remember there are these beautiful structures. Many of them are geometrics. Like they put a lot of care in this structure. They don't just build things for the heck of it. They put a lot of effort into creating a structure that harmonizes with our energy. And because now a lot of our rooms are like full corners, that's not the best for our energy actually. When it's curved and when it's rounded, it's better for the flow of energy. So they consider factors like that. They also use a lot of crystals. I remember seeing these large crystalline columns, and temples were surround and built around these columns. And there were a lot of great libraries. A lot of them, I think you can see reminiscence of these characteristics in some ancient cultures, like some parts of Sri Lanka. You can see the structures, the Polynesian area, the California Pacific coast. You can see a lot of these reminiscence. And what I've done with the research, from my understanding, is Atlantis is mostly in the northern hemisphere, and the Lemurian continent was more towards the southern. So these two eras have been the prime of our existence, and we are heading back to it now. So we are rebuilding Atlantis. And so when people say ascension, ascension, I think that's what it means. We're returning back to
right.
that cycle.
What was the socio-political system like?
From my like past life readings, so I do readings with a lot of people, and I learn from what I see from the Akash too. And it seems like they do have some type of like a governing body, like there would be a leader, councils, and different divisions of the council. And actually, it worked pretty well. Like they, for example, everyone was able to express their voice. They have these like meetings that they would get together and express ideas. Um, Over time, towards the fall of Atlantis, the Dark Ones infiltrated these structures and started to crumble over time. And it's kind
Right.
of what we're seeing now in our 2021st.
Although, would you say that perhaps ever since the fall of Atlantis, it's kind of been like a fallen state we've been in, where all the systems have been a bit more corrupt anyway?
I think so. Yes, from my understanding and channeling is that those that have caused partly the fall of Atlantis is still in control now, and they think they're better than us. They call themselves the elites, or they call themselves all different types of sacred bloodlines. So they don't look at us as the same way that with equality they think of us as somewhat lower than them. And I think that's where a lot of these like unfair enslavements with the financial system and
Yeah,
economics comes from.
yeah, I agree, and I know it's completely might seem unrelated, and I don't know if you would recognize it or not, but
Hmm.
it reminds me of One Piece, the anime, because there are these elites who they're literally considered to be gods and above everyone else, and they treat normal people like dirt. So
Mm.
honestly, it's got so many parallels to reality if you
Oh.
actually know what to look for. So
Yeah, they disclose it to us too in movies and stuff. They're like, yeah, this is what they want to do. And you're like, no, thank you. I'm going this way instead. So,
yeah, there is a reason why they have to reveal it, isn't it? What's that?
yes, yes. I don't know what you think, but I think it's due to the law of free will here. So they can't technically do things to us unless we somehow agree to it. And so through TVs, television or tunnel vision, and programming, the
Mm.
subconscious mind of people. And when we don't say anything, in a way, we're kind of agreeing to it. So when we watch like movies, and when a person is conscious, we know that something is wrong with this movie, like Hunger Games. You're like, what? This doesn't even make sense. Or those horror movies, right? You're like, why would anyone sit down and think about these concepts? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So it's their way of like telling us, like, hey, this is what we want to go, and hypnotizing us, because when we're watching TVs, our consciousness in a state of, I think, alpha or theta, I'm not quite sure, but we're more easily hypnotized during those states. And so they would put these ideas into us, into the collective consciousness. And yeah, the only way to get out is to wake up,
Yeah.
unplug.
But it also shows that we actually do have the control. They're tricking us into, and also we've got the law of attraction on us, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
They're cut, they don't have so much of a connection with the source. So if they trick us to manifest a reality that's dark, that's how
Mm,
they do it. But if we get awareness on enough of the scale, like it's over for them. Like
yeah.
if we no longer agree to it energetically,
Mm,
right? The whole thing, it's over. It's like
exactly.
a pacifist revolution through energy. Like, does
Yeah,
that
you
make
put it
sense?
so well. Yeah, absolutely. Like we are like upholding it, but the moment we let go, they crumble. And I think that's what we're seeing happening with like GameStop, and we see people like, unsubscribing from Amazon or Netflix. The people were saying we have enough and we want a different reality.
Kind of makes me wonder why I'm putting this on YouTube. But yeah, why are we here? Why are you listening? No, but seriously, I appreciate that you're listening. uh, so I suppose I mentioned the law of attraction. So let's delve into that.
Sure, yeah. So law of attraction, I think, is a double-edged sword sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
because if we think about negative stuff a lot, then people will say, "Oh, you're gonna attract more of that." And if you think about positive things, but I also realize that it's more like a magnet. Actually, we have a dipole magnet. So people think, or if you do, for example, shadow work, if you're diving into the darkness, you're going to attract more darkness. Initially, you might feel like it because you're opening like a Pandora box. But
Right.
as you're clearing things, I was like cleaning a closet, then it's going to be empty and light, where it's, a blank slate again. And so I think that there is still so much to learn about the law of attraction, and it works hand in hand with transmuting our shadows. Because if
Yeah.
we want certain thing in our lives, like I work with a lot of people, they think they want something, but they actually don't in the
What
subconscious.
if instead of actively trying to set the intention to receive something that you think
Mm.
is good for you, what if instead you just do the shadow work and heal and naturally what you attract will improve?
Yeah, I think so, because you're releasing the resistance, right, within your field. So, for example, if someone wants their twin flame, for example, but within themselves, they do not feel safe to be in the masculine energy. If the person is female, then it's going to be very hard for them, even if their twin flame comes, to recognize them. So I think you're absolutely right. Like instead of just keep on pulling and manifesting your twin flame, working within yourself to release the resistance of blockages, will allow it to flow, like the Buddhists say, it will come easier. And that's, I think, what happened to me. So, so
Cool.
from personal experience, working in the resistance and shadow actually works to attract your desires.
Yeah. So unfortunately, ego gets in the way a lot as well, doesn't it?
Sometimes, yeah.
For example, you mentioned ego traps in one of your videos. Could you
Mm.
elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the ego, sometimes we have to understand what the ego does. The ego is like an operating system. Like window, I don't know, 97. And this is our hardware. And our ego is a way for us to understand our world. We need our ego to live here because that's how we need to operate. But what comes into imbalance is when we don't understand what the ego does and we let the ego take too much of a personal power away. So, for example, the ego, right? It's made to made to fear unknown. Like if let's say a child doesn't know about the world, like this is called a cup, this is called computer, this is called mom, it's going to have a very hard time to navigate the world. So it creates this ego, right, through teachings, through understanding, to create a sense of safety in the early parts of their years. And then once they reach into their own consciousness, that's when they slowly start to question the ego and say, is this ego helpful? Is it trapping me? Is it helping me? Because the ego can actually help us in a way if we know how to work with it.
So what's a healthy ego look like then?
A healthy ego, it's like this. If you are your master consciousness and you call out a staff meeting with these aspects of your ego, hopefully they are a team that works for you, for the company, which is you. But when it's this harmony, when you call out these egos, sometimes I'm more clairvoyant, so I see things. Sometimes in the beginning, you see like a little gremlin trying to cause chaos or make you doubt yourself. And
Right.
other times in my broad meeting, a staff meeting, I'll have a goddess aspect. So I'm like, well, I like this goddess aspect because it helps me, feel confident in my and in my feminine energy. So I'm going to keep that. But the gremlin, maybe not so much. I'm going to have to work with the gremlin to transform it. So we can transform the ego for sure. And another example to your viewers may be helpful is when I first started coming out to YouTube. I'm very introverted. I actually don't like to go out and socialize too much. And so when I work with this aspect, I found a little mouse, right, in my broad in my staff meeting, and this mouse just want to hide.
Oh,
And so I love it. I picked it up and say, you don't have to hide. And I worked with it. Like, where does this come from? Oh, from a bullying experience. Okay, well, I love you. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. You're doing your best. And and as I work with this little mouse, it just transformed into a lion. So then I work with the lion energy that when I'm on YouTube, I'm just like a lion, just showing myself, right? Be in my power. And just share. Nothing is wrong with that. It becomes neutral. So I hope that helps.
it
Mhm.
does. I actually, yeah, I got a mouse when I was doing some healing with a Reiki practitioner. So
Oh.
that reminds me. So the next step is to make it a lion, I guess. Because I am a Leo, it makes
Yes.
sense.
Oh, you're Leo. Wow, that's cool.
What star sign are you?
I'm Virgo actually. So.
I'm on the cusp of Virgo.
Oh, really? Nice. Wow.
So yeah, it's interesting. So I suppose we're on astrology now. We're talking about that. So
Mm.
what it's obviously a lot more to it than what you read in the newspaper, right?
Mm. Yes, I think so. Yeah. Newspaper is like a fortune cookie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people they do. I'm not an expert at astrology, but I do feel that because we are interconnected, the energy of our solar system and even larger can affect us. So but I try to not put too much emphasis on it because I don't want to give my power away to Mercury, for example. Mercury retrogrades, people go crazy, but I'm like, just be more conscious, do more meditation, but I'm not gonna stress over it.
What if someone's born with I'm not sure if it was on the ascendant or the descendant. Like what do this the planets or bodies that you have, like set of bodies you have, like when you're born, they play a role,
I think so, yeah.
right?
It's called birth charts, I believe.
Right.
So If you check your birth chart, I think there's this website called Astrology Cafe or something, and it gives you all your house and stuff like that. So it does play a role in your mm, characteristic as a person, I think. So, yeah.
Okay, so one thing I saw that was quite interesting, you've got all these different types of aliens you talk about.
Yes. Our
So, can you
galactic
tell us about the
friends.
what can you tell us about our galactic friends?
Yes. So a lot of us, for yourself and some of you listeners, are souls that have traversed beyond Earth. Earth is actually quite new if you look into the whole multiverse, and some of us are called star seeds. Basically, we originated from other planetary system or solar system, and we came here to help as a mission. Rather it for your own soul's expansion. Why do you want to travel to other countries? Well, for the heck of it, just to explore. Or you have a specific mission. You're here to heal the planet. You're here to save animals. You're here to save forests. Everyone might have like some type of mission that they do. But through the Akash, you can then see where have you been and what type of the solar system are you connected to. And so for me, my awakening, I started seeing these um, star friends or galactic friends. And at first I'm like, okay, I've lost it.
In what
But over time, you start to interact with them and they're real. And
do you mean
it,
channeling?
yes, they're channeling. There are many ways to connect with them. Some people have implants. It's like an actual implant that they can attune to like a radio station to their guide.
An implant.
Some people
How do you end up with an implant?
It can be through different ways, but one way is either a person was abducted by the bad guys and they put these implants to track the soul. So we're diving a little deep to the rabbit hole right now.
No, it's
So
fine. I like to dive deep.
cool. So they do abductions to do experiment or hybridization programs, and so they tag the soul, tag the body to track them, and that's one way. And if you are rescued by, let's say, the Galactic Federation, they can reattune the implant to maybe your guide's frequency. Then there are the implants by your galactic family. So let's say if you are a ninth dimensional Pleiadian wanting to come here, they're going to put an implant so that they can connect with you. But it's not something that you can see physically. It's something that's multidimensional or interdimensional, I should say. And so there's two ways, usually these are the main ways, but you can connect with your family with your telepathy. You can connect with them through your heart. And yeah, there's many ways to connect.
So, do you need to have the right frequency, enough of a frequency to have done enough healing to actually interact with them, sustain or consistently?
Yes, I think so because you have to be activated to connect with them. It's like you incarnate, but they don't really know where you are until you become like a beep beacon of light. So once you start doing your spiritual work, once you're more awakened, and when you're ready for that connection, then they will come forth and give you signs, affirmations, or synchronicities, or out of body experiences for you to help remember why you're really here. So I think, yes, a soul has to reach a certain state to be connected, not because of, oh, good enough or not good enough, but more about safety, right? So, yeah.
So, what do you know about entities that people see when they're on DMT, for example,
Oh,
or when they're on
yeah.
mushrooms?
Yes, depends on the entity. So there's many dimensions, right? We want to think about dimensions like musical notes. There are all these notes, right, in the orchestra of the multiverse. And so some people can see different entities. Some are astral, some are ethereal, right, beyond the physical. Some are higher dimensional, maybe seventh dimension, ninth dimension, fifth dimension. So it depends what they are seeing.
I've got a question actually. Someone I knew once, they when they
Yeah.
were when they're very old, they mentioned tree people.
Oh.
Any idea what that would be?
I think that's from what we call the ethereal realm or the elemental realm, because I have seen those spirits before, but they're definitely not in our physical realm for sure. And I find that most of the tree spirit that anyway, the ones I have worked with are very kind, very loving. They remind me of those inns from Lord of the Rings. It's kind
Ah,
of like that.
so the person that they must have been awakening then.
Yes, yes. So, depend on the soul too. Let's say, for example, my soul was created from the elemental realm. So, elemental spirits come to me like very easily. Whereas some souls that I've read are more like angelic souls. So, working with the angels come very innately for them. Whereas for me, I have to put effort to
Right.
channel with the angels. So, that depends on their soul and where they've been in other incarnations. So,
So what exactly are totems?
totems. Oh, I love totems. So totems are great spirits that comes forth to bring the vibration that we need along our divine destiny. And sometimes they come to you in dreams. So last week I was dreaming about dolphins and playing with me. So the dolphins is coming to me to say, Tiffany, you need to play more. You need to be more joyous. And then the next night I got elephants and they were protecting me as a herd. So that brings forth unity. Like, don't work alone and um, work with others to create the strength. So they come to you
Hmm.
to give you a message, like what you need at that time. And they're wonderful to work with. So,
Yeah, I've also well, something I've started is doing very recent. I started getting to runes, and that's a form of divination, right?
oh, right. Yes.
So divination is a similar process, right? Where you get help
Mm,
from spirit guides or what have you
right.
somehow in the process. And I'm curious what you think, but somehow they influence the result and it has symbolic meaning. So
Mm.
how do you think it works?
I think it's through our higher selves. I think we already know the answer partly, but sometimes in the third dimension, the veil is so thick that either we don't trust ourselves or we just want the affirmation, right? And so through divination, we connect with our higher selves or our guides and to bring us a more tangible advice or to affirm what we already know or to give us new insights that we might not know. So I definitely believe that there is like a multidimensional aspect to divination.
Well, that's pretty cool. So it is what anyone that's can do it potentially.
Yeah.
So it's worth at least playing with it.
Yeah, there's so many ways. People do like tea leaves, or you can even open a book, just like get a book and just say, my higher self, what message do you have for me today in regards to this? And then you open the page and you might see a word or phrase that helps you. So it doesn't always have to be a pendulum or a card or runes. It can be a lot of different things in our lives. So
Right. Well, I mentioned aliens, and so what could you give some basic information about different types? For example, one episode you mentioned mantis aliens.
Yes. So, with all types of beings, there's good and bad. So, I'm going to focus on the good ones,
Yes.
the good side. So, a lot of people are so scared of mantis because there are mantis beings that are associated with abduction. So, you remember seeing like an ant like or mantis being, and then they just categorize them all as bad. But in the higher dimensional ones, right, they're actually very peaceful. They are vegetarians. They drink liquids from plants, and they are highly, highly spiritual and very advanced. And they actually do care about humans because they understand that their lower aspects have also been enslaved. So the ones that are in the higher aspect and more aware, they are here to help people. And maybe, one of our incarnation was an insectoid being. And in truth, insectoid beings is one of the oldest type of beings in the universe. So we, this human template, is actually quite new. So There's that. There's avian beings, but they
Ah,
don't like to be called avians because they don't, they're more advanced
are
in the
they
way.
from Venus?
Some of them can be from Venus. There's also some from Orion, some from Sirius. I think that's all I remember for now. So avian beings, they do have the more bird-like features, kind of like Ra or Horus, how they depicted. You have all types of insectoid beings, bee-like beings. You have even sea creatures type of beings. You have a lion beings, so feline
Lyvans.
beings, yes, so lion beings, feline beings, where they have a more like feline structure, like the straight nose and the more like main line features. So there's all types of life forms in our multiverse.
Why do Palladians look like us?
Yeah, so the Palladians that I've seen are humans that look like us because they have a very long history with us. They have been here since Lemurian time, like teaching us, helping us, and um, they also have a lot of star seeds right now. There are millions, I think, last time I checked, of star seeds that have Palladian DNA codes within them. So that's why they're quite involved with us. And they're also quite close to us, right? Distantly speaking. So that's why they kind of look like us. But in truth, when I tune into Pleiades, there are other type of beings too, not just humanoids. So just wanted to share that in case someone's like, "Oh, I remember my past life self on Pleiades, but I'm not a human." So yes, there are other types of beings.
So I suppose you get a whole constellation, right? And you can't say you only get one being in a constellation.
Right? Yeah, you're
I
right.
mean,
It's just
there's
like
just
Star
one
Trek and
planet,
Star
an
Wars.
Earth. So what about
Mhm.
Star Wars?
So it's just like Star Wars and Star Trek,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, they travel between these systems to work with each other and help each other as well and colonize. They
Mm.
have different colonies.
I heard that there's the uninhabited planets on in the solar system with other species, from what I've heard. And on Gaia, I saw there was an episode I watched about some guy got visited from aliens from Pluto, and
Mm,
then there's like apparently Mars is still inhabited underground or something. So there's,
yes.
and I don't know if anyone lives on Venus now, but Ra from the Ra material
Yes.
was from Venus originally. So
Right.
yes,
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. There's Venusians, like on my channel, I have talked about them. They are real. They are here. They have tried to work with our governments. Like Valiant Thor himself has stayed and tried to persuade the presidents in the past to work with the light, but he wasn't successful because the presidents were under surveillance of the dark ones. So
right.
it's
Now
very tricky.
I've got a controversial question, I suppose.
Mhm.
What's your opinion about the relationship between Trump and aliens?
I think he knows. Like, I don't know Trump personally, but I think he knows about extraterrestrial existence, and but we're nowhere near where we're ready to have that kind of disclosure. And I think that hopefully, with each of our own efforts, right? You and I here doing these videos will help open and activate more and more souls, and it will be like a cascade effect where then now 70% of the population is ready to know more of this. But right now we need to get along
Right.
within our own planet first. So
So you something else you've mentioned is the Gaia's grid, basically.
yes.
What
Mhm.
exactly is that?
Yeah, so I call it the ley lines, and the ley lines are energetic lines that connect the energy. It's like Earth's meridian lines. It connects
Right.
her energy, and the grid does shift. Like in the past, the pyramid were right in where it's supposed to be, but I think now it's off to a degree. So there are different structures that the dark ones know about this, and they will build their own temples on those nodes. And because of what they do, it taints the grid line. And so what's happening now is that a lot of these places are being cleared, purified, so that we can purify the grid line again. So this is all happening right now, and which is good news, but
That
it takes
that's very good. And
yeah,
from what I heard, because they were deliberately corrupted, that influenced
the
people
collective.
living here. And is
Yes.
that part of what was done by the Dark Ones at the time of Atlantis?
Yes, because there was the crystalline columns, and the crystalline column was supposed to help anchor light energy, supposed to create this pocket of high vibrational energy. But at the end, when there was like a nuclear war that broke out and these things started sinking and crumbling, our consciousness went into a slumber. So now you will hear a lot of light workers. Some are grid workers, portal keepers, key keepers, healers, alchemists, and facilitators. We all have our own skill. We're all just trying to bring back this grid, this golden grid for us. So,
Right. How
mhm.
does what I'm trying to think of? How does Thoth fit into this and the Emerald Tablets?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So I think that it's to each of their own. I think that Thoth or Tahiti to me is a higher dimensional being that has a lot of knowledge, and some of the knowledge is so old that we don't even remember it anymore because it's from the Atlantean times. Some people have brought up the concern to me, well, I think that those timelines are tainted. And so it is true, there are timelines that are light and then timelines that are tainted. So if you are to connect with Tahiti, you make sure to ask your higher self to connect to the ascended um, aspect of that deity so that you're
Oh,
aligning to the right information.
I
And
suppose there are timelines where you might have. I suppose are there timelines when anyone goes into a dark path?
it can, from my understanding, so this is from the Venusians, and they say there are about 7 main timelines. So when they monitor Earth's development, there are 7 Earths that they monitor. And so the military knows about this, Project Looking Glass, and they know about parallel worlds. And at any moment in time, we are seeing, okay, which of these Earths are we,
And we
aligning
can switch
against?
between them. How do you feel like you're doing? Like, which I suppose there's
Mhm.
nothing to feel bad about if you're on a certain timeline. It's just like,
Yeah. Well, you can jump timeline. Every time you do healing, you jumping timelines, and collectively we jump timelines too. And I think right now we are okay. I think compared to 50 years ago, we're definitely heading down a darker path. But
yeah,
I think now with more people awakening, we have a greater chance. And from the message I'm getting from the Venusians and the Galactic Federations, we're doing okay. So, but there's still more work to be done. So,
right, definitely. That's a
mhm.
sense I'm getting. I do sense that we've got it. We've probably got it in the bag in the long run, but
Mm.
we can make it a lot smoother. And there's a lot more work to be done. It's not like it's over.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think we're good though. I think now the energy is lighter, definitely. And actually, the Galactic Federation is doing so much in the background. Some of them put their lives on the line for us. So we have a lot of help. So I
Okay.
want people to be, you know,
Yeah, definitely.
calm about that. So yeah, just stay
But of course, it
positive
doesn't
and
look like that right now, does it? I
right,
mean, there's a lot
right.
of turmoil. I mean, people are so divided, but maybe that's because, well, people have been manipulated and have to deal with all these energies, and people freak out when they deal with these energies. And we
Yes.
people go, no, it's those guys. No, it's those guys. I mean, I get it. I was part of that just a few years ago. Even, yeah, yeah, I was embroiled in that, so I totally get it. And
Mm.
like, what do you think is the best way to help um, with regard to that?
Yeah, I think it's just going beyond the division, like you said. So sometimes we're like Mr. T or Mr. B. We're still
Yeah.
dividing. We need to just be like, screw the old system. We're gonna make the new earth, the new reality for us. So unity. So coming together, like so a lot of people is starting to come together, co-create their self-sustainable community.
Oh yeah, that I've heard
Like
about that.
Ubuntu movement is getting huge now. I also work with a group called Life Force, and they also has an app that brings people together.
How's Ubuntu spelled?
Ubuntu is Ubuntu. So that's starting as that's been going
And
on for
what's
a
the other
while.
thing you mentioned?
It's called Life Force. So if you go on the App Store and you search Life Force Watch, um, they are creating assemblies, and they actually really fast now. Like New York is an assembly. They're creating all the legal papers, and I'm part of the Canadian Assembly,
Oh,
and we
cool.
are
So
doing
have you
different.
heard about permaculture?
Oh yes, yeah, but I don't know much about it.
Is it are these things similar to that in the sense that people on a local level, or maybe not local, but working together to get things done and to do things like
Yes,
independent of the established
exactly.
systems?
Absolutely, and
And
that's
this
what
is a
Life Force
sign,
is doing.
right? This wouldn't be
Yeah,
happening if it wasn't for like the awakening. And by
yeah,
doing this, we build the new earth one step at a time like this, right?
exactly. And we won't need the old one. We don't need to fight it. We'll just make our own new
Yeah.
one. Yeah. So I would definitely say that's what we can do. And just bringing our energy into it also helps, right? Because we're creating this vortex and saying, this is what we want to manifest.
Yeah. And I guess the important thing is not to get too caught up into these battles between dogmas and ideologies. People
Mm.
need to let go because I guess it's more about us and what we haven't dealt with yet than we realize than it is about
Mm.
like whatever we point at.
Yes. Yeah. So pour our energy into creating what we want. Um, Even on an individual level. So, for example, if someone is stuck at a job they hate, we'll start pouring energy into creating what you would want instead. Even start today. So, little small acts like this will
Oh,
help
here's a
us
question.
move.
Suppose someone, so there's two ideas about doing what you love. One is, well, quit that horrible job that you, or quit that job you don't like and do something you love instead and find a way to monetize it. But the other is find a way to put love, pour love into what you're doing, find a way to love it.
Mhm.
Now, the former is a lot more appealing to me, and I'm doing a podcast, so you can tell which I chose. But I suppose I know that it's doable to like pour love into something that you hate and then turn it into something that you love.
Mhm.
But how do you do that?
Oh, that's that's a easier said
How do
than
you
done
learn to love
question.
cleaning toilets?
I think actually some people, when you are looking at it as a way to be in service to other, like law of one says, like instead of focusing the small act, but looking into the bigger picture, I'm being in service to the greater whole. I am like when I was in the corporate, I wasn't enjoying it that much, right? Because there's a lot of structures, but I
Mm.
look at it and say, well, I'm servicing my coworkers now, and the money that I'm receiving now, I'm investing into my training. So all of it, I just look at my job as something that's to help me bridge into where I want to be, and servicing those while I can, because it's not going to last forever. And that's what happened. I just, after a year, it was time to leave. And I left with a bunch of savings and gave my business a try. I say, I'm going to go for it and see what happens. And so far, so good. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
very good.
but we need to have strategies for sure. I'm not saying to quit jobs tomorrow, do it strategically. And it can be done. Yeah.
How do we get in touch with our spirit guides?
Yeah, through your clear senses, like we talk about, and for me, it was through meditation. So I started out with mindfulness meditation, and then I would just slowly get messages like, boom, whoa, okay.
Right. So it is, a lot of this is about meditation. What do we do
Yes.
about meditation procrastination?
I think a routine is what helped me. So when I was in the corporate, every day after work, I made it a discipline. Like, okay, right after work, I'm gonna do yoga and I'm gonna do meditation. And there was no excuses. It was just like me kicking myself in the butt and say, you have to do this.
Well, there's one person I interviewed and they say that they they don't have any structure at all. They're in the moment the whole time, and that they
Yeah.
make a point of not having any structure and just choosing at the moment. Is that something we need to be ready to do? Or is it something we can do at any
I
point?
think so. I think what he's talking about is possible. Like now it's possible, but in the beginning it's harder. So to each of its own, right? Some of you can tune in and out very quickly. Some people need more of a schedule, more of like a commitment. So for me, commitment worked first just to get the train going. And then once the train starts to move, it becomes easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. Get it like wired into your brain first, right?
You're
Because
right. Yeah.
otherwise, you might find yourself beating yourself up for not doing it, even though you might know better than to do that. Like a lot of us, we get shamed or whatever, like for all sorts of things. There's this tendency if you're not where you might like you want to have a certain goal, but because you
Mm,
keep on failing to meet it, you actually feel worse and worse potentially.
right.
So
And
how
that
do you?
comes, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
you had a lot of social anxiety and depression,
Right.
and I suppose, do you have any key insights, tips to help people get out of
Mhm.
that?
Yes. So I think the first thing is addressing the trauma from the past. So, if speaking from my cultural experience, Asian culture is very punishment based. Like you do this, or you're gonna get like punished. So I think that's where what you were saying. We procrastinate when we don't reach a goal. We punish ourselves and feel shameful because that's how we were brought up. And so I needed to work on that. And so instead of perfection, I needed to teach myself to focus on progress, like at least one bit. At least I'm doing my best. I'm doing something. So we got to address those past trauma and verbal abuse or like bullying experiences that really help us doubt ourselves and pour this extra layer of shame on top of us and then guilt. We need to like release those layers and find that core self, which is our inner child. And what helped me is like healing with my inner child, the little Tiffany's that were hurt, shamed, bullied, and very traumatized, and just hug them and love them again because I forgot about them. They were just stuck in my subconscious,
Right.
crying by themselves. And so the shadow work helps me
S-
reclaim those
Mental
parts.
imagery sounds like what you do because you had
Exactly.
your conference with your different aspects, but you can have
Mm,
a play session with your inner childs, and then
exactly.
they're crawling all
Yes.
over you, like being silly, and it probably
Yeah.
quite fun,
Yeah.
really.
Exactly. And so that helps over time. It's not a miracle pill, but I think that after I did it for a year consistently, every second week, I would see my healer to do this work. And then I started to feel okay, like functional again. So and now even if I still get like social anxiety, I just am able to call my guides to know that I'm not alone. And when I show up on YouTube, that's how I do it. Before I do a radio, I sit down, I ask my guides, even this interview, I say, my guides, please come, and let's do this together. So that helps with this social anxiety. And because it helps you come from a vibration of a master of light, like Jesus or Buddha. How are they so unconditional loving? Is that they in that state of being? So
Right.
that's what helped me over time. So
Have you ever tried talking to Gaia?
Yeah, yes. I remember the first time I took shroom, I was talking to a forest. It was so cool. So, yes, you can talk to Gaia and her different elements and totems. And we part of her, she's part of us. We interconnected.
Yeah, very loving and motherly. So
Yes.
archangels and light magic, I suppose. There's these,
Mm.
you can ask uh, these meditations where you can get them to sort of have a protective grid around you, and you can call for the help. Like, do you have any advice or anything you want to share about that?
Yes, so I believe the universe is benevolent and that we have help. And if there's light beings that help us, why not? Right. So I work with the angelic beings, and I guess a lot of us, we kind of forget that they exist because of how scientific our society is. And they forget about the spiritual part, but it's such a major component of our existence. And so you can work with your guardian angels. Everyone has spiritual guides. Usually at times, like some of them come and go in different areas of your life, some of them stay with you all your life. Like many people have Jesus or Mother Mary of Kuan Yin or Archangel Michael that work with them the entire life. And so you can invite them and ask them for healing. But when we ask for healing, we just want to make sure we honor it. So rather we thank them through prayer or burn a candle and incense as a gesture of gratitude in exchange for the healing. But there's so much that they can help us with, and they are very happy to help us, those that are ready to receive.
Yeah, and you mentioned gratitude, and it's very important, isn't it?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, because I see sometimes people where they feel blocked is they want to believe it, but they don't. And so it creates like a blockage in receiving. So, to work with that blockage, it is partly ego. We're working with your limiting beliefs, but also what I found helpful is humbleness. So, being humble and feeling, I'm not all that. I am here now, and it's okay to get help. So when you come from this humbleness, it melts away the ego and it becomes
Yeah.
easier.
Here's something to ask. On one hand, there's this idea of not attaching too much to our beliefs and just
Mm,
yeah, not attaching too much with it. But on the other hand, there's this idea in spirituality of trusting your intuition.
mhm.
So how do you strike the balance or combine them together? Like, yeah,
Yeah, I think it's like Buddha said, walk the middle path. I think it's situation to situation. So if in this moment you find this is helpful, right, then work with that. If in another moment you feel this technique is more helpful, then use that technique. Because everything to me is like a technique. Like
right.
Buddhism, breath work, it's a technique, and other is a technique. So you, as the master constructor, you choose what works for you in the moment.
So I guess when we get into spirituality, we start building a new relationship with truth and what it even
Right.
is.
Mm-hmm.
And we do need to trust ourselves, but we're not trusting that there's this one thing that's absolutely true
Mm-hmm.
and can't be wrong. We're trusting like a loose sense of truth and going with that.
Right.
And maybe that's different.
Right. So, like relative truth, right? I think
I
that's what you're
suppose so,
saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I suppose to some people it might look like you're just not basing it on evidence, you're being arrogant or something. But well, it doesn't really matter what it looks like to them, I suppose.
Yeah, each person is different. And I even, in spirituality, there's so much diversity. Like some people believe in angels, but don't believe in power totems.
Yeah.
Some people believe in chakras, but don't believe in channeling. So yeah, it always depends on the person.
So crystals apparently help you quite a lot with your aura and chakras. So how do you make use of How do you make use of crystals?
Yes. I think they call to you like, I always have crystal around me and they come to you in certain periods of your life. Sometimes they bring a certain activation to you, and other times you activate with them. So there's so much to talk about. It would take like a long time to talk about crystals, but they call to you because everything is vibration, right? If you feel called to work with amethyst, it's very healing. It helps with releasing nightmares. And if you work with, for example, this clear quartz pyramid, I use it to help me channel because it focuses energy and it anchors here. So when I'm channeling, I use this piece of crystal. So yeah, I think that they all have their own little
Is there
vibration you work with.
is there one link to the heart chakra?
Yeah, there's lots that opens the heart. Rose quartz, right? These guys are pink in color. Uh, Green ones as well. I don't have them here, but
Right.
heart shape crystal. This is actually a
Ah.
seashell. It's
Speaking
called,
of green and rose quartz,
yeah.
so there's the heart chakra, which is green ray, right?
Hmm.
But there's another one, like another. There's seven main chakras, but this is another chakra, which is the rose quartz chakra.
Right.
What's the difference?
Between the two. The green heart, when it's activated, is emerald. And when it becomes an emerald heart, it is the common characteristic we know, like compassion, forgiveness, love for the elements around you, like nature, animals, people, friends, and family. The higher heart, the pink one, when it's activated, it becomes magenta. And the magenta heart then connects you to 5D, which is also the divine feminine, also the divine realm. So connecting with your guides, your higher self, higher heart. So they both love, just different expression of love. One is more towards the upper realm, and one is more towards where you are now. Mhm.
Wow. So we have an emotional body. How does that work?
Our emotional body, I look at it as one layer of our ethereal being, because you can see the ethereal body. For example, even our language describe our emotional body. Like she's green with jealousy. So when someone is jealous, you can see that their heart chakra have these murky green energy. He's red with anger, and you can see these red color bursting out
Right.
of a person. That's why we flinch when someone is angry, because you can feel the energy from them. So they do have colors in the emotional body. And when there's trauma, it can be seen in the emotional body too. So sometimes we get cords that attaches to us. Sometimes we get leaks or like um, tears in the auric field from trauma. So when we heal, we mend it. We close up those gaps to heal the emotional body. And it also helps us attune deeper into our shadows and inner child as well, because the emotional body bridges you to that connection through sensations.
Right. So suppose we're angry about something. Is it
Mhm.
because we're externalizing fear?
It could be, yeah, it depends on the root cause of the anger. Most of the time, I find anger is from hurt. So from a
What is hurt
past
then?
trauma is hurt, right? Someone have hurt you, and because you feel disempowered and you need to protect yourself, the only other emotion you know is anger, right? To
They did
protect,
this to me and I'll get
right?
back at them, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Or
So
just,
that's
yeah.
one way where
Is it,
anger can come from.
is that hurt a separate, is that hurt shame or is it something separate? I don't know
It
what
could
is the
be.
nature of pain, like psychologically or spiritually?
It's multi-layered, but I like to dive into it through layers. So the first layer, right, I feel in this trigger, like something upset me, I'll be like, okay, why is this upsetting me? What's the first layer here? I breathe into my emotional body and I feel shame. So I'm like, okay, let's, breathe out the shame, release it, love it, respect it. And then deeper into the shame, I'll find, oh, there's a frustration. Okay, where is this frustration coming from? and then you go deeper. Usually frustration comes from a violation of boundary that can uh, anger is like a sign
Yeah.
to let you know your boundaries is violated.
Or at least that
So
you feel that your boundaries are violated.
yeah. So
Yeah.
then you kind of just go into deeper and deeper until you find, oh, here's the core wound. This is why this is happening. Maybe someone said something to us, and maybe certain experience we've gone
Okay.
through.
But someone might have said something, but that might be reminding you of a previous occasion. So if it's how do you know what the real root is? If it's something when you're a child or if it's the thing itself that feels so egregious.
Yeah, it's multi-layered. That's why I mentioned there's different inner childs. You have like a 5-year-old, and then a 7-year-old that going through this. So it's very multi-layered. When you do inner child work, it's just not this one little Tiffany. There's a Tiffany as her 5-year-old bullied because her homework was not good enough. You have a 7-year-old that was abused because of this is this. So you have different fragments, like you said, that you have to work with. And it's step by step, you uncover and heal these layers, and you start to find and become whole again. So,
I feel like I can see these other Tiffany's on the screens in the background
yeah, some
making
of them
silly
is jumping
faces.
around. And yeah. Yes, so thanks for bringing that up, Nicholas, because sometimes people think shadow work is just going to bring pain, but actually sometimes you forget that you have a part of yourself that loves to jump around and have fun, and it's good
Yeah,
to bring that part back
that's
too.
that's true. That's true. And it's by doing that we actually heal and feel better and lighter from it. So
Exactly.
it may feel negative at first, but you had that in you already. You already were feeling it. You just didn't know you were feeling it. The only difference is the awareness is now there.
Right. Yeah, well
Yeah.
said. Exactly.
And I'll be honest with you, I've actually asked you about a whole bunch of things. Oh, there is some stuff I haven't mentioned yet. So, what is light language?
Oh, light language. Light language is a form of healing. So, like some people use singing bowl, some people use Reiki or like chi energy. Light language is using our voice, sound to heal. And so, I most people have the ability to work with light language. Again, they have to be ready and activated. And so it's simply a healing method through working with the higher dimensional beings, maybe ascended masters or celestial dragons or angels, and you become a servant to that energy and to broadcast and express that healing energy through your sound. So when a lot of people receive light language, they will feel tingling in the body. Sometimes they will feel like an expanded feeling, or they may feel love and feel light into their hearts. So it's a form of healing, and it's really, really great because it works with all clairs. That's what I find. Doesn't matter if you're clairvoyant, clairsentient, as long as you have the heart to help others, it comes quite easily.
Oh, so you just need to try, and if you're ready, it will come. If not, be patient.
Exactly. Yeah. hmm
So, you've done energy updates. So, how do you get a sense of the energy and the information to share?
hmm Sometimes it's my guys, they just told me, okay, you gotta sit your butt down and do a video. Because sometimes you're like, I don't want to do video, but then they were like, this is important, you gotta share. And then you're like, okay. And then other times, it's more intentionally. I would sit and meditate, and I would just connect with the humanity consciousness and be like, okay, what is going on in the collective right now? What is the energetic signature right now? And the message comes. So it is from channeling through my guides or through my own connection to the rest of the collective. So anyone can do it. there's many different ways to do it. Some people do it through card reading, like they would do like a collective energetic card reading, and whereas I'm just channeling. So yeah.
Huh. So now I'm experimenting with runes. I could do it with that.
Yeah, yes, you can. You just set the intention that this message would be helpful to humanity or whoever is watching the video.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Um,
hmm
and there's just so much fun stuff to play with in spirituality, right? That's what I
Yes.
like about it. These interesting meditations, these interesting
Mm-hmm.
methods. Now, and as long as it's light work that you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
um, and as long as you're at least a bit careful, you should be all
Yeah.
right, I guess.
Yeah, protection is very important for sure. And yes, only work with the light. Well,
Yeah.
shadow work is light too, but try to do things that are in service to others and brings love and light.
You could call shadow work light work because you're shining light on the darkness
Yes,
within.
yes, it's alchemy. So to me, shadow work is a form of light work. So
Alchemy. You've
yes,
mentioned that before. Jung also explored it. And they had a whole spiritual philosophy. It wasn't just about getting gold,
right,
right? So,
right.
what do you understand about alchemy and what is it?
Yeah, so like you said, there's different branches. There's a physical aspect, which is the transformation of elements, but in the spiritual healing field, will be more about soul alchemy. So shifting the vibration of your soul through healing or activations or meditations. For example, if your soul has blockages, these blockages might come out as a physical symptom or financial blockages, and you can alchemize, right, with your guides, with your higher self to shift these vibrations imprinted onto your soul. And that's how I look at it as alchemy. You just shift from one state to another, and you can shift from lower to higher, heavier to brighter.
Might this be like even like a disorder that you've or a condition that you've grown up with that might be actually something imprinted on you as a soul?
Might be, or I find a soul might choose to experience it, or it's simply an effect of your soul on this dimension might not work with the frequency as well as some other souls that have been on this planet for longer. So a lot of starseed children now, right, they would have labels as ADHD and things, but it's just because they're so used to processing information much faster in the higher realm. Down
Right.
here, everything is like underwater, it's a little slower. So to me, I don't find, sometimes these disorder that we experience really a disorder. Is just like spiritual side effect of different
Maybe.
souls. So that could be it too. So there are many reasons, and it's different for each person.
Right. Well, we've talked about a broad range of things, and I'm not even sure what to call the title of this. It's just a conversation with Tiffany Tin, I think.
Yes, multi-dimensionality of your
Multi.
soul.
Oh, say that again. Multi-dimensional.
Multi-dimensionality of your soul. I think that's would be good.
Yeah, I mean, you came up with that intuitively, and I like it.
Yay! That's awesome.
Yeah, the more you tap into your intuition, the more you might get something that surprises you. You're like, I like that. Whereas before, like, I must think it all through and have it be perfectly, and then it's just like it's not the same. It's kind of lifeless when you do that. So
Yeah, yeah. So that's where we're heading. We're all gonna be like that, way more open and
yeah,
connected.
that there's this picture of like the left brain and the right brain. Actually, if you look at it, I've seen it. This one is like these it's grayish and grid-like connections. Like the other one is like this explosion of color, right?
Mm,
And I'm just like that almost represents like we're moving towards an explosion of color,
mm,
metaphorically, right?
yes, yeah, yes. when both hemisphere and all layers of the brain come into harmony. Mhm.
It's like that meme or something of this guy who has gone.
Oh yeah,
It,
oh yeah.
but it really is like that.
Yes. And it's great because it helps us visualize the process. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're that guy, but we really are. Yeah. So yeah, I'd like to interview you again, and I hope you enjoyed, listeners or viewers.
Yes. Thank you, listeners, for joining us today.
And of course, like and subscribe, or if you're on YouTube or wherever, that would be great. Yeah, well, I'm grateful that that you're that you're here with us. So bye for now, I guess. See
Yes.
ya.
Bye, everyone.